this a credible person that sees the difference between wrong and right? And I need to be honest with you right now because of the circumstances I'm in. I mean, he should have been honest with the BBC, but this is the heat is on him even more in this scenario, I imagine, because law enforcement's involved. But
Mhm.
is this a person that has the moral compass to be truthful?
No, no, whatever will save him, that's what he's going to do. That's why they'll be able to offer him deals. That's why he'll get a deal to do this and a deal to do that. That's the good thing about it.
Hi, all. Welcome to Reading Royals with body language expert Scott Rouse. Scott is now listen to this description because it's important to today's conversation. Scott is a trusted advisor to law enforcement, the military, and Fortune 500 CEOs. And of course, you recognize him from his very popular YouTube channels, Scott Rouse and the Behavior Panel. I wanted to ask Scott, this is a little different today, about his role as an advisor for law enforcement, because I will text Scott and say, here's a video I just saw. This is interesting to me. And Scott will be like, I am out of the country on a secret mission. I cannot tell you where I am, but I'm working with law enforcement and I'm trying to settle down this wild situation. So I wanted to ask Scott about what Andrew's day was like on the day he was arrested on his 66th birthday. This was February the 19th when law enforcement swooped in on the Sandringham estate. They took him into custody. He was released approximately 12 hours later. And Scott, you have worked with law enforcement all over the world. You have worked with law enforcement specifically regarding very high profile individuals and cases. Can you kind of set the tone for me on the lead up to this arrest? It's my understanding that the palace was not given a heads up, that King Charles was not given a heads up. Can you walk me through that strategy? How was that decision made? And then, we know we saw plainclothes officers, regular cars. I mean, a lot of thought was put into this, not just thought, but intention around keeping this a secret.
Usually in a now keep in mind Britain is different than the United States, like it is
Yeah.
in Canada. All those and they're in a way everything's pretty much the same, but there's these little variations of rules you have to follow and for laws and those kind of things. So what would have the reason you wouldn't tell anybody you're doing that is so they can't say, "Hey man, heads up, flush everything or get rid of whatever because they're coming." And granted, his brother's the king and all that, but blood is thicker than water. So he may, who knows, he may have called him and said, because they may be tight for all we know. It
Well,
may look one way and not.
they actually hate each other, but yes.
Do they really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's too bad. Well, anyway,
Is it
so
too bad? I mean, to me, it gives me a sense of confidence in the king's version of events, which is that he didn't know what was going on in Andrew's personal life because they weren't very close. They didn't have a lot in common. There's a big a gap in age. And so when the king tells his subjects or us, the peasants, that he was not familiar with Andrew's dealings and personal relationships, I'm more confident in that excuse, knowing that they weren't necessarily very close.
yeah, well, yeah, you're probably right. I don't,
You're just my body language expert.
I can always tell you, I don't know anything about that stuff. I try to, the only thing I know is
You're
what you tell
learning.
me.
You're keeping up. You're
Well,
learning.
and I do have some questions that I thought of today, but we'll talk about that later on.
No,
But
you're
so,
well, yeah, absolutely.
yeah, because we get into it and I'll be off. Anyway, so what would happen is they wouldn't tell anybody. There's no reason to tell anybody. It's not going to help any. It may hurt some. You never know. So, and when you go do something like that, you don't want to make a big deal about it. Nobody's arrested a royal in how long has it been? Never
400 years,
arrested.
I think it was.
Yeah, probably. No, it sounds about right, I guess. I don't know, but so it's probably been a while since one of those have been arrested. So you don't want to make a big deal about it. It's going to be a big deal anyway. So they don't send cars down there, a bunch of them, lights and sirens and all that. You go down, you try to look as professional as possible because you're dealing with somebody that most likely is not going to be shooting at you. You're not going to have to kick the door in. There's a lot of things you're not going to have to do. You don't have to breach. You don't have to do any of that stuff. So you go get them. And the reason for all this is you want to see what's in that house. You want to be able
Mm-hmm.
to search everything. So you take them down, you book them. In other words, you You get a record of that they're there, they're in trouble, who they are, take their fingerprints, take their picture, and all that stuff. And the only reason you would do that, and hold them for a while, the only reason you would do that is to get into their stuff, to be able to have the right to go search their belongings or home and homes or whatever it is. And that's what they're doing. Now, keep in mind, they're not searching his house for all thing. The reason they're going after him in this is not because of the things he did to people. It's the money thing, from my understanding of it.
Yeah. So it's
But,
not, it has nothing to do with the sexual assault allegations. It has everything to do with the government confidential information that we saw that he shared with Jeffrey Epstein through the DOJ drops. Now, there are nine entities in total currently investigating Andrew, law enforcement entities all over Britain currently investigating Andrew, and some are related to Epstein's, private jets landing in London, and some meetings between Andrew and potentially some of Epstein's girls. So there are investigations associated with that, but this particular arrest is directly related to the confidential secrets that Andrew shared with Epstein while he was working in the capacity of a government envoy. And I think what concerns me about what you're saying is that it was a few weeks ago that in the dead of night, we did not expect Andrew to leave his home in Windsor, Royal Lodge, and move to Sandringham until Easter. But the king and Prince William were so frustrated seeing images of Andrew riding around on his horse on the Windsor estate and looking like he didn't have a care in the world, that the king throws him on a private jet and says, you got to get out of here. We're going to send you over to Sandringham. I need you to be as far away from us as possible. You're a distraction. You're a negative influence. You are frustrating people, with your lack of empathy, compassion, and your complete lack of self-awareness, right?
mm-hmm.
And so in the last few weeks, there's been a sense of urgency for them to move things out of Royal Lodge to Sandringham. And you know what the moving process is like, a lot of purging, a lot of, I don't need to take this, or I don't want anybody to ever see this, so I'm going to throw this in the fireplace. But what you're saying is they're swooping in because their ultimate objective is hard drives. What other emails might we find saved between Jeffrey Epstein and Andrew? What other tangible evidence can we get our hands on to prove to us that Andrew was sharing secrets with Jeffrey Epstein that he shouldn't have been, so that we could prosecute him for this? And it just makes you kind of nervous knowing that there's been a back and forth and packaging and unpackaging and boxing and unboxing of these items, knowing that the police are looking for specific pieces of evidence here, and some of those hypothetically could be lost in transition.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, yeah, and this is the perfect opportunity to look for things in things that orbit that. Because you like I can't remember the name of the movie, but there was a movie trying to get Al Capone and arrest him for being the leader of real gangsters back in the old days, back in the 30s and things like that. And the only way they could get him, one of the little nerdy guys, one of the little guys, that studies all the analytics, said, what we can get him for? We can't get him for murder. We can get him for tax evasion.
Yeah.
You're like, what? Like, yeah, man, this cat could go to prison for 100 years for the things he's done. That was how they got him. So they went in, and the things they found that orbited that problem of tax evasion, they found all kinds of stuff. And you're right, that's what they're doing here. They're trying to get in and see what else. The main goal may not be the information he traded back and forth financially. That's a big deal because you're dealing with, on that level from a society standpoint, it's a big deal. But what they're really after, I would assume, is the other things he was involved with Epstein, not just that thing. And that's the wide open door. And that's one of the reasons that a lot of people, I'm under the impression, haven't been arrested yet already, is because that other thing is so hard to get a hold of. I mean, you're talking about some horrible things these people did. It's hard to press you against that. Now, if they catch one of these, or they take in one of these people, and whatever they find out wasn't true, shoot, they got to let them go. And they can go back home and get their stuff together and say, you can't come in here anymore because, I didn't get in trouble. They've got to find something else. So they lock down. For example, it's a difference in a sheriff's department like what's going on in Tucson. And then you have the FBI. The FBI is there too. But the FBI doesn't come in until they know for sure they're going to win. There's no question about it. There's no question whatsoever that they're going to find what they're looking for because they've already built their case and they've run it and they've run these scenarios and they've won the case outside of actually executing the case. And I'll bet you that's what's happened with Andrew. Because when you go in for something like that, you got to be confident. If you're arresting that guy, bringing him in for that, you got to know it. Because if not, your department's going to look like, it's not going to look very good on for them. And then he's going to say, they're all the time doing this. They lied about this. They said that. Now they're coming at me for this ridiculous stuff. So I'm sure whatever it is they went for, they got it and they found it. They knew what he did before they went in,
Right.
or they wouldn't have done it. So,
Well, and you just
yeah.
to your point, like the um mascot's a terrible word. I'm struggling to find another suitable word, but the face of Andrew's sex scandal is Virginia Giuffre, who unfortunately is no longer with us because she took her own life. So, you know, it's not like you can throw her on the stand. She wrote a book, but you can't cross-examine a book. So I don't even know if her book would be allowed in court over there because there's no one to challenge it. But this seems like the lowest hanging fruit. And
Yeah.
you already are seeing some of those tangible pieces of evidence in the DOJ drop. And it is my understanding that if they find anything related to sexual crimes, they will share it with the other agencies that are currently investigating him.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It'll be a big deal. And there may be stuff they have already, but they're
Mm.
trying to get those things together so there's no question about whether he did those things or not. That's why that thing is so big. 3 million files or 6 million or whatever it is or is going to be. So
And did
there's a
you know
lot
that
in there.
after they redacted some of Andrew's files, they re redacted them? So unless you took a screenshot, it's harder to find documents directly related to Andrew because for some reason, and I'm not accusing anyone of anything, although normal people would be like corruption. I'm not accusing anyone of anything. Maybe it was a mistake in general. We have seen several mistakes throughout this dump. Hundreds of victims' names were exposed in bank information that should not have been exposed initially in this dump. But it is odd that some of the documentation associated with Andrew was initially not redacted, but then was redacted. So it's not as easily accessible to people unless you took a screenshot and you have that information saved.
Yeah, and again, it could go either way. It could be
Yeah.
accidental, it could be on purpose. Oh,
Well, we don't
sorry
know.
about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you never know with something like that.
It is wild though. Hey ladies, if you've been feeling exhausted, anxious, foggy, or just not like yourself no matter what you try, and your doctor brushes it off as a normal part of aging, you're not crazy, you're being ignored. The medical system has been far too dismissive of women's hormonal health for far too long. Joy was created by a woman who lived this frustration firsthand during perimenopause and decided women deserved better. Every Joy Lab includes a consultation with a licensed clinician who specializes in women's hormones, a real expert who explains what's actually happening in your body. Many doctors also never mention that testosterone is a critical hormone for women, influencing energy, mood, metabolism, and confidence. Yet, it's rarely tested. Joy offers real treatment options, including hormone or peptide therapies and personalized supplements tailored to what your body actually needs. For a limited time, you can add a 60-day supply of their estrogen face cream for just $1 with clinician approval. Stop guessing and start getting answers. Go to joyandblokes.com/Kinsey and use code Kinsey for 50% off your labs and 20% off all supplements. That's joyandblokes.com/Kinsey, code Kinsey for 50% off your labs and 20% off all supplements. Joy and Blokes, healthcare that actually listens to women. It's my understanding that in the UK, they're much more protective of the mugshot. They're much more protective. I mean, Do we need another picture, though, after that horrific picture of him in the back of the car? I know you've told me from a body language perspective that images are so different from um, video. Video gives you a much better understanding of what the circumstances are. But even just as a regular Joe,
Mhm.
what was your response to that frightening image of Andrew in the back seat of his car leaving the jail, looking like a shell of a human being?
Yeah, there's a lot going on there. It's really tough to to zero in on one expression. You can say, "Oh, that's anger," or "This is embarrassment," or "That's scorn,"
He's
or
crapping his pants. He is
Mhm.
crapping his pants.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of it's panic because you'll go from one, and the reason I always say pictures aren't very good when you look at body language. Somebody says, "Here's what's going on." Yeah, it's tough. You can look at facial expressions for that moment and say, "What does it look like's going on?" That's fine. But you can say exactly, "Here's exactly what's going on," because they could be moving from one expression to another, and so it could make an odd expression on their face. That's an odd expression he has. I'm sure there are lots of expressions going across his face during that. That just happens to be the one they got.
Mm-hmm.
And he does look, for me, I would say panic. That's what it looked like. If that was presented to me and said, what's up with this? Because the guy's panicking. And that facial expression lasts a little while. That one's not likely to fade very quickly or change to something else. It would
Well,
be a combination of one or two other expressions.
to stay on the mugshot idea, I don't know if we'll ever see it. Someone suggested to me, like someone in law enforcement might feel naughty, might need a buck, might sell it, might leak it. Um, we've covered Andrew on this channel together. That arrogance, that chip on his shoulder, that entitlement. Was that a humble moment for him when he had to stand in front of that camera? Do you imagine? Do you imagine that he hated the process of fingerprints and having his mugshot taken?
Yeah, I don't think it was humbling for him. I don't think you can humble someone like that. The ego is so out of check and out of control at that point. These people are wrong for doing this, even though he knows he's done something wrong. I could be wrong, and things could. I don't know this guy. I never met him, never saw him in
We'll say
person.
allegedly, allegedly.
Yeah, but for that personality type, the way he's been raised, and like no one else in the world, like nine people have lived their lives
So is
that
he not mad? Is he not mad that he's there? Is he mad?
he's probably. I would, well, of course, he would be angry that he's there, that this has happened, but there's that regret that comes with everything you did that led up to that, that he's thinking about, I shouldn't have, I shouldn't have, I shouldn't have, I shouldn't have. And that's a long trail of I shouldn't haves there that he did, that he's got to live with. So there's the regret that comes with that as well. And that actually is taxing on a person from a behavior perspective.
I think hypothetically, we could discuss this with the realistic understanding that an attorney is going to tell him to shut the hell up. But,
Mhm.
I agree with you. The theory is let's lock him up for as long as we can, approximately 12 hours. We're going to just tear his homes apart and try to get any piece of evidence that we can find.
Mhm.
But he is not going to talk. I doubt he said two words to the police. If hypothetically we pretend a conversation was had, how would you advise those police officers to engage with a high profile individual that is so arrogant and entitled? What advice would you have given to them to try to get a little bit of information out of him?
Well, in that situation, at the beginning, you cast a wide net. And you begin with something like this when you come in, because you leave him in the room by himself, let him think for a few minutes, maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes. You set him there by himself, be back in just a few minutes, once they uncuff him and set him down at the table, depending on where they've sat him at the table. He could be, you don't want to do those things where you're on one side and he's on the other. You want, if it's a rectangle table, you want him here and you want to be almost right beside him. So you can almost reach out and touch him if you need to talk, but you start back a little bit, then you work your way forward. Takes a while to do, 2, 3 hours, so it's comfortable. But when they first sit down, they may say, "So, what's going on? Do you know why you're here?" You may send someone and say, "I don't know what all is happening. Can you bring me up to speed? We got a lot going on here. I know this is a big case and all that. What?" And so you would sound almost confused about what's happening. So, what's going on? How do you see what's happening here? How's this look to you? What do
Wait,
you
so
think's
this
happening?
would be an officer saying to Andrew, "What's going on? Like, why? What's the big deal? Why are you here?"
Yeah, but not like that. It has to
Right.
be. there are different personality types you want to use for different people. So for this kind of person, you could go two ways with this, and it could go just fine. You could go that's which they'll probably use the straight laced. So can you tell us about whatever it is that style? My everybody has their own style of interrogation. Mine is more like getting to know the guy, so he feels like I'm his best friend, and I'm there to help him. That's
Are
the
you good cop, Scott? Are you a good cop?
I always play the good one, in the good cop, bad cop thing where I'm always the good guy. But in the good cop, bad cop, the good guy always ends up being the bad cop,
Hmm.
which that's the rule. You never send a mouse to do a rat's job. So I can turn into a rat pretty quick. So anyway, so that's the tactic I would take is so, almost a confused thing of tell me how you see things going on here. What do you think? And you break your speech up so it's almost so he has to pay attention. So you get him almost leaning in from the beginning. And you say, so tell me how does this look to you? What's going on, or what do you think's happening here?
And
What
why
are we doing?
why this tactic on him? Is this a typical Tuesday for you, or is it because he is a high profile individual that can be difficult or in like he's very uncomfortable socially, right? He's an uncomfortable, not very friendly person socially. So is this a strategy you would use with that in mind? Have you done your research on him? Did you watch the BBC interview? Are you making this assessment based on your own research, or do you sit down in the moment and go, wow, his he's really giving me some rage feelings, so I'm going to pivot and behave this completely separate way towards him?
Yeah, well, if it was me, if I had to go in there and do that, I would know everything about him. I'd all
Yeah.
these things where I'm going, I don't know, what's he doing, all that stuff. When I went in there, I wouldn't know as much as you, but I would know a whole lot about this guy when I went in. And the person who was going to talk to him was going to know everything. So if anything slips over here, he'll know to ask questions about that or remember, okay, this is what happened. I can ask a question over here that might draw that in and we'll get more information. There's a lot that goes on with that. So if he and so you have to be malleable when you're talking to these people as well, because if you get in there and find out, say he's a schizophrenic or something, and you realize that as you're talking to him, then you got to change your tack. You can still be the same way, but you slowly turn from the "Hey man, it's me and you" thing to over here to something else that will help you get that information you need. He's not in a situation where you have to get as much information as you can, or a specific amount of information from him because somebody's missing. Let's say that a child is missing or a woman's missing or something. They've got him. They need to know as quick as they can. That's different. We're talking about something that it's almost like a con. These when you deal with people that are in these situations, you've got different kinds of people who take money for this and from banks and people who con people out of money for their startup, that kind of thing. So
Also in the is I when you said con, my mind went to, although I register what you're saying now, is this all just a waste of time because they don't think they're going to get anything valuable out of him, and their ultimate objective is just to collect that potential evidence for future use?
no, he's not the smartest guy in the world. You can
Ah, that's
tell
true.
by talking. I mean, you can tell by the way, and I don't know a lot about him, but I can tell you by watching him talk to other people and listen to that interview he did with before the interview. Man, he's not the smartest guy in the world. So he's going to
So he
slip up
might talk.
somewhere. He'll slip up somewhere and give you some information about something, and you don't have to address it with him. He just may say something, and believe me, there's going to be a whole lot of people watching him and watching the recording of that and going, shoot, we didn't know this. We got to call so and so because you break that down to all those little parts. There's more than one person that's going to be watching what he's saying, listen to it, and see if there's anything they've already got in that big wide spectrum of Epstein stuff they already have, and see if they can connect anything he says to them. If he says, oh, if he accident, sometimes people will get these we call them like little phrase viruses, where someone will say, "Oh, I know what you mean," and they say, "You know what I mean" all the time. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? They say, so he may have one of those, and they may know somebody within that uh, Epstein, world says that all the time too. And although Andrew hasn't said that before, we don't have a record of him saying that. And all of a sudden he starts saying a lot. You can say, the guy over here says this all the time. It goes down to that small a detail.
Wow.
So let's see if
Wow.
we can connect something with that guy.
So
So
you
there,
realize that he might be closer in the Epstein ecosystem to this
right.
other person that's alleged because they have a similar delivery. They might share
Yeah.
some similar strategies in the way they communicate. That's really interesting. That's
Yeah.
really, really interesting.
So that guy
And
may be the one that's trafficking people or the head of the trafficking thing. Why would he be hanging out with that guy? Well, then you've got something else. Well, anyway, so that's in a
would they
nutshell.
overwhelm him with the idea of the trafficking or the sex offenses in this scenario, or to protect themselves? Would they focus on his job in the government and focus on that line of questioning? And yes, share the interview with the other investigators that are focused on any of the sex crimes. But in this particular case, not to overwhelm him or panic him, would they keep their questions focused on him potentially violating the rules by sharing confidential information with Epstein?
Um, they would not get into the other stuff,
Yeah.
the other people involved in that, like the sexual stuff. They wouldn't do that. They would keep it totally on this and focused on that. And if something came up about the other stuff, they might get into it. What do you know about that guy? How do you know that guy? You might get into that. How do you know that guy? Where does she come in? Where did you meet her? But it's a real in the situation that's in play now. It's a really um, fragile situation because you if you ask certain questions, they say, well, you had him in here to ask him for this, as Laurie will say.
Yeah.
So this doesn't work because you got to be really careful so you don't he doesn't get let go for a mistake you made. I don't know
Yeah.
what the rules are
Which
over there.
happens so often. I mean, what you're saying happens so often in the United States. Like
Mhm.
the cops didn't have permission to do or search or see, or like, and then that evidence is no longer acceptable, or the judge says that evidence isn't allowed in the court because the judge doesn't feel like it was obtained appropriately. So I
Yeah.
completely understand what you're saying.
However, there is in America, I don't know what it is over there, but in America, if we go in, I can tell you anything I want to. I can say anything I want to say to you. I can lie to you to ball face, except for say, if you tell me I'll let you go. Anything
Right.
around that I can't say. And there are some other things like that. Other than
Which
that,
they did in Making a Murderer, didn't they? Didn't they do that to, they did that to Stephen Avery's cousin in Making a Murderer. They said, if you'll tell us that you did it, you can go home. And
yeah,
he's
see,
like,
that's not
fine, I
cool.
did it. And he's still locked up in the pokey. So,
Yeah,
uh, yeah, that's interesting that you brought that up. I'm always worried about that. I'm like, they're going to
yeah, you
lie.
got
They're going to lie. They're going to say they have something on me, which is why I don't leave my house.
yeah, yeah. Well, after yeah. Well, and another thing you don't want to deal is that false confession. That happens a lot, So
Yeah.
but he's not going to false confess anything. I don't know why I'm going down this road, but yeah, I won't even go down that road. We'll be talking about something completely different. But um, I think they did exactly what they needed to do, and I'll bet you $1 million they didn't talk outside those parameters and get into the women or the whoever else was involved in all that.
Do you think he talked at all? I mean, I think his attorney would be like, shut up.
It
We're
would be
not going to say a
basic.
thing.
It would be really basic. And
How
then,
humble, you said he's not humbled at all, but like how awful. Because I imagine that there's paperwork and you have to write down what the date is that you're being taken in, and you have to write down your birthday, and you're like, like this is the worst birthday ever. Um, you watched that BBC interview with me not too long ago. Is this a credible witness? I mean, you can talk to
um,
this guy all day long, but like, I don't believe a word he says.
well, it depends on what's going on. For a witness, he's the guy that he's
Is
the
this a credible person? Is this a credible person that sees the difference between wrong and right? And I need to be honest with you right now because of the circumstances I'm in. I mean, he should have been honest with the BBC, but this is the heat is on him even more in this scenario, I imagine, because law enforcement's involved. But
Mhm.
is this a person that has the moral compass to be truthful?
No, no, whatever will save him, that's what he's going to do. That's why they'll be able to offer him deals. That's why he'll get a deal to do this and a deal to do that. That's the good thing about it, because that kind of person
But
would,
is he not the ultimate prize? Taking down a member of the royal family. It's one thing if he could hand them someone bigger, but I think he's the big fish with Epstein dead and Ghislaine already in jail. I don't think anyone cares about Peter Mandelson, and I actually can't find any true relationship between the two. Um, would they offer him a deal when they would be getting a pat on the back for taking him down?
I don't think in this situation That's the concern. I think the concern there is getting those people that have done those horrible things that we've been reading about lately, that are just the most horrific we've ever heard about anybody doing that off the out of population. We get those people. That's where I think their heads are. I don't think they're going, I got Andrew. I really don't think they're going to do that. I know some of those fellas, and they're not like that.
Okay.
They're not. Some of them, I'm sure there are as you get up, and they're trying to be political and all that. But you don't want to mess around with some of them. And when you're dealing with the New Scotland Yard and those fellas, man, some of them were there. They're not messing around. I don't. I think that's their concern is to get rid to yeah, would be their concern to get those other people out of population as quickly as possible. I'm sure that's where their heads are at, as is everyone else's.
Let me ask you this before we wrap up. The Metropolitan Police are now investigating some of Andrew's Royal Protection officers for looking the other way when Andrew would go to Epstein's Island or when Andrew would have meetings with Jeffrey Epstein. But at the same time, some of those former Royal Protection officers have come out and said the royal family retaliated when we told on them. So we actually were fearful of being demoted and losing our jobs. There's one specific instance, we don't know what member of the royal family it was, but an officer claims that he reported that he was speeding or he or she was speeding in their vehicle and they lost their royal protection job, were thrown back into a uniform and on the streets. And, you know, I feel kind of sympathetic towards these royal guards that are being interviewed and questioned right now for looking the other way when we also have these stories circulating of people losing their jobs for trying to do the right thing and to tell on the royal family when they felt like something inappropriate was going on. Have you heard about any of that, or what's your
Uh,
reaction when it comes to just your relationship with law enforcement and the difficult position that puts them in?
Yeah, if you've putting yourself in a position where you're going to jump in front of a bullet, or if somebody runs at this person, you're going to run at them. You're going to be the person who's going to put literally. Everybody goes, he puts his life on the line for it. They do that. They've got families, kids, lives, everything. Your parents, every kids. Well, why? And they will say, no, I won't do. I'll do away with all that to make sure nobody gets to you. And then they treat them like that. I don't have any room for anybody like that. And they should, whatever that, whoever did that's got whatever they gets, they get, they've got coming. Those kind of people, I don't like that. Sorry, I get
Yeah.
worked up, but you shouldn't treat them like that. Those people are there for you. And you hear these horrible stories how, you know, some of the former presidents and their wife would treat the Secret Service like they're damn dogs or something.
Mm-hmm.
And these people are there to keep them from getting killed, and they treat them like dogs. And those people, in the end, they get what's coming to them, as we're sort of seeing right now. Uh, so that always comes back around. You have the karma part of it, if you believe in that.
Right.
Because I don't have any room for any of that, not even a little bit. Mm-mm.
And that's such a difficult position to be put in because you've been trained a certain way and it's a bit of a promotion, I imagine, to be assigned. I've met a lot of these guys. I adored them. They had
Yeah.
great, like you said, they look like these machines, but the
Yeah.
reality is they're silly. They've got great personalities. They're very likable. They're human beings. And they've worked their way up to this position that, their mom is bragging about around the
Oh,
Christmas
yeah.
dinner table. And then they have to put their own moral compass in jeopardy because they are afraid of losing their job. It just seems like a really impossible situation and an
Yeah.
unfortunate situation.
So, yeah, so the onus falls on the royals who did that, and that's who they should root out. And if anybody else above them knows about that, then they should get rid of them. And if
Yeah,
they don't, then that whole thing, I won't have any room for it.
I know.
I won't, and totally would lose respect for everybody involved in that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what will come out of this Metropolitan Police investigation, but I do hope that if they found evidence of royals retaliating and firing people or ruining their livelihoods, I would hope that if those people are still within the structure of the British royal family, there would be change. I actually don't know if it sounds like something Andrew would do, or
Mhm.
God love him, Prince Philip, but I suspect it's not something a current working royal would do, because they all seem very, aside from Andrew, who again is gone, they all seem to have their heads, pretty good heads on their shoulders, and they seem like pretty sweet individuals. Is there anything else that you thought of yesterday as the chaos was happening about Andrew, or anything that you think the audience might be interested in regarding, was he treated like a regular Joe? Um, did he get any special treatment, do you imagine?
Yeah,
What's your thought process there?
I don't know. I haven't seen anything. I wouldn't think they'd handcuff him.
Yeah,
You
I've heard
know,
that as well. Yeah, you're right. You're right. I did
they'll
hear
just
that.
walk him in and they'll take his picture, do all that stuff. And it's for that one reason to be able to get in and get into all of his personal stuff. They
Hmm.
put him in his little cell for a little while. If they did that, there's just be him. And then they'll give him for maybe, I don't know, couple of hours or a few hours, I don't know. And then cut him loose after all, after they make sure everything's the way it should be, and then they go ahead, and there's no telling what they did at the house while he wasn't there. I don't know how those people work. Is his
Right.
wife there? Was she still at the house or what?
His ex-wife, friend with benefits, who just lived with him for, years after their divorce. She's still a jet setter,
Is
Scott. Like,
that
she's been
Fergie? Is
skiing,
that
Fergie Ferg. She's been skiing with friends. I mean,
okay?
she's laying low, but I don't think she's taken the hit that she probably realistically should be taking right now,
So they're
because
not married.
they got divorced in the 90s after Fergie was photographed with her feet in someone's mouth.
Okay, I'm getting off here. I can't do this.
I know you love man feet. I know you love
I
me. I
can't
know
do
you
this
love feet
anymore.
talk. I know you love feet talk here on this program.
That's too much.
She was with the family, like the entire family, I believe, is the
I don't want to
story.
hear this. I don't
No,
want
no,
to
no,
hear
no, no.
about
Listen,
this.
she was with the entire family on a family vacation. So they're all in a giant estate. And she comes down for breakfast. And it's those big, long tables where everybody's enjoying their meal. And you got 30 people around the breakfast table. And splashed all over the front pages of the tabloids is that picture of her in it was an American, a Texan who he did the same thing as Epstein. I think he managed money. She has a type. And he was in finance. And so she walks down thinking it's just, going to be a great day with the fam, and there's the entire royal family like looking up at her like, have you seen what you've done?
Ooh,
What That's a bad day. I mean, that's
yeah, that's
probably,
rough.
is it worse than Andrew's 66th birthday? I'd say no, but it's a bad
No,
day.
yeah, yeah. Where's your dog? You gotta get what? So I got to feed her in a bit. That's so she's over here like it's time to eat, man. We're
You
gonna go eat.
better go feed her. That's our out.
Yeah.
That's a nice it's a nice goodbye. Hattie, go eat your grubbing. All right.
Yeah.
Well, agree with us, disagree with us. Let us know in the comments below. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend. And Scott is back on Monday. And I really want to go over Prince William's videos with you from the BBC interview. So that's something for us to look forward to. I just didn't think it was appropriate to do this week based on the breaking news.
Yeah. Great. That's what we'll do.
All right. I look forward to talking to you then. Go
Uh,
subscribe to Scott Rouse on his YouTube channel. And if you want to get a cackle, the behavior panel right before bed, turn it on, sit back, relax, watch these grown men make each other laugh and laugh right back at them. I will see you again next time. Thanks so much for watching. We love you. Bye, guys.